What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Mamaverse podcast, where we bring in experts in physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual wellness to talk about how moms can improve their overall health in their daily life. I'm your host, Tu-Hien Lee, joined by my guest today, Desiree Argentina. Desiree is a mental health therapist that is passionate about spreading awareness and helping people to improve their mental health and change their lives. Welcome, Desiree.
Hello, thank you so much.
Yes, so Desiree, I figured we could start off with you giving us a background on yourself and what inspired you to get into this line of work.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Desiree. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I knew from a young age that I had always wanted to be in some sort of helping profession, but I had no idea that social work was even a thing. So I knew I wanted to go to college, but I didn't know what to go for. So I just went for general studies. I went to a 2-year community college. And when it came time to pick my major and go for my bachelor's to a university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And whenever you say helping profession, people mention like nursing, things like that. And I knew I didn't want to do any of that. I knew that wasn't for me. But I didn't know what was. So I remember just like literally flipping through physical pamphlets and just of the majors of all these different colleges. And I came across human development at SUNY Binghamton, upstate New York. And just every class sounded amazing to me. It sounded so fascinating. There was, philosophy and studying women's bodies and adolescent development, childhood psychology, all these different cool classes, expressing your feelings through writing. So everything sounded fascinating to me. So I just said, oh, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to that school for that major. Had no idea what I could do with that major, but it really resonated with me and what called to me. So still had no idea what I wanted to do in that major. And one of my professors said to me, it was becoming time to graduate. One of my professors said, why don't you volunteer at the local nonprofit? My husband is the director there. I'll connect you to. So I ended up volunteering in their syringe exchange with substance users, and they offered me a full-time position. I started part-time and then the full-time person left. So I replaced him. So I did that for 2 years, and working in that nonprofit, I met a lot of social workers, and I had just graduated with my bachelor's. So I met a lot of social workers and I learned what they do, the different ways they could work in different capacities. And it just sounded fascinating to me. So after 2 years, I knew I wanted to go for my master's in social work. And so that's just, I kind of ended up in this field, but I feel it was meant to be. I love it.
That's awesome. So could you tell us a little more about exactly what social workers do?
Oh, yeah. Well, social workers do so many different things. I mean, you could work in so many different populations in so many different capacities. So, like I said, there were a lot of social workers working at the syringe exchange. So, you could work more in like a caseworker kind of capacity. Right now, I'm working in a middle school and high school providing mental health services. So, I'm an effective needs school social worker, which is different than a general school social worker. You could work in hospice, you could work in prisons, you could be a medical social worker, work in hospitals. One of my friends is a social worker at a doctor's office. So she does consults there for mental health consults. And then I worked as a therapist at an outpatient mental health clinic on the children's unit with kids between 5 and 19 years old. So you could work as a therapist. And a lot of social workers go into opening their own private practice, which is my goal in the near future.
Okay. So I was about to ask if social workers are generally working with nonprofits, or is this like a government organization that you're usually working with?
It depends. You could work in any capacity. Social workers could work for colleges. They could work, again, I worked at a nonprofit. You can work for the government. So that's what I love about social work is you could work in any field, any capacity. So that's why I like it. It's very flexible. And it's a very high burnout field. So if you get burnt out in one capacity, you could work in a different population and get a whole other job working with different people, different ages. So that's what I really like about it.
So a lot of social workers are therapists, but not all social workers are therapists.
Yeah, not all social workers are therapists. No. You can be a therapist, but not all of them are, no.
Okay. So you mentioned that you work with middle school and high school kids, which I find fascinating. Could you share a little bit more about that? And I feel like this is probably a very popular topic with more emphasis on mental wellness, especially with like younger kids and how that experience has been.
Yes. So again, I'm an effective needs social worker. So it's a little different than a general social worker. So my building is a middle school and high school. So there was a middle school general social worker, there was a general high school social worker, and I'm in the effective needs program, which is just students that have a higher level of need. So they have either anxiety disorders or PTSDs. They all have IEPs. So yeah, so it's a little different. So I have a caseload of just my kids, and it's anywhere between like 10 and 20 students that I work with. And so, yeah, I provide their social work minutes. So I see them more on a group or individual basis. Whereas the general school social worker, they're in charge of like the 400 students of the whole school. And we did a lot of, programming like the suicide prevention programming. And we do as well the threat assessments, the suicide risk reviews. So seeing if, seeing if student is suicidal or self-injuring, things like that. So assessing those situations. Yeah, so it's different all the time. It's very interesting, and it's a unique population to work with for sure, that age group. But I love working
Mhm.
with kids and teens.
Yeah. Sounds like it can also be really complex
Yes. Oh,
navigating
for sure.
all the social aspects of middle school, high school on top of mental health. What have you found to been the most effective while working with the kids and all these very like serious and sensitive topics?
Oh, 100% the relationships. The teens are so driven by their relationships. So if you have a great relationship with a student, you're set, you're golden. Like that is, they really learn to trust you and depend on you. And that's the same for therapy. The most important aspect of therapy is that therapeutic relationship. Studies show that clients are more, that therapy is more effective for them and a positive experience, and they make more positive changes if they have a great relationship with their therapist. So relationships are so, so important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I could see that. And then, so when you're working with these kids, are you also working with their parents as well and like communicating what's going on and how to, address these things at home?
Yeah, so we're pretty much, for my team, we were pretty much on in contact with the parents on a regular basis. I would say much more so in the outpatient mental health clinic that I worked in, because parents would bring their children in for the sessions. I would see them every single week that they brought their kids in for the sessions. We would have family sessions. I would see the parents individually, things like that. So I would say in the therapeutic aspect. As for working in the nonprofit, I worked with parents a whole lot more. Mostly in the middle school and high school, it is mostly phone calls. Whereas the parents do come in once in a while. We had just an open door policy where parents could stop in at any point to come in, check in with their kid, have meetings with us on our team. But it was a little different because, as with the schools, I know a lot of the schools are really trying to put an emphasis on mental health, but I still feel that academics come first for the schools in particular. So it was a little difficult providing mental health services, pulling students out of classes. A lot of teachers would get upset when you would pull a student out of class. So it was a little difficult. And just being in the middle school and high school, just with COVID, we were virtual for some time. My program, we weren't virtual the whole time. We were in person a lot of that time. We were the only program in the school. So there was only like 20 of us in the whole building. So it really became academics focused, and I almost became like a tutor or something. I was helping students with their schoolwork. That just kind of became what happened just through COVID. So it was a little difficult. But coming back from COVID, when all the students came back. I know schools across the country saw this, but we had very escalated behaviors that we had never seen before, never, expected that at all. So I know schools across the country were really struggling.
Yeah, this is a very, very interesting topic here. To kind of touch upon what you said earlier, when children are seeking help, obviously the parents are going to be like a significant part of their process and their therapy. How much do you like involve the parents as far as like helping them, like teaching them how to talk to their kids, or like even adapting to that? Because I'm sure it's a strain on the parents as well if their
Yeah,
kids are going
well,
through things.
it's really tough because a lot of the parents, I feel, we run into a lot of obstacles when it comes to the parents with their child's mental health. We regularly, me and the two other social workers, we regularly call parents and recommend that their child go into therapy. And we always get resistance to that. So a lot of parents are like, well, I haven't seen anything wrong. My child hasn't told me this. And they're probably just trying to get out of class. They're probably just trying to get out of doing assignments, things like that. So we do run into a lot of obstacles when we try to provide the students with, therapeutic services. And there's only so much we can do in the school. So we do need to refer out to therapists. And a lot of the parents are very resistant to that. And I don't know whether it's denial or they feel that their child should tell them, but a lot of our students tell us that they have told their parents don't take them seriously. And we do see that in meetings with parents, that they don't take their child's mental health seriously. We'll have students that are, have suicidal ideation or are self-harming, and the parent really tries to push it under the rug. And I don't know if that's because they don't know how to handle it or don't know what to do, but will recommend a parent bring their child to therapy all the time. And a lot of times the parent won't.
Okay. I was just thinking because even like my parents, the term phrase mental health wasn't really a thing. And even when I
Mhm.
was growing up, I don't think it was really focused about doing your schoolwork and doing the right thing. So have you found that kids really try to use this as a way to get out of schoolwork?
No, no, I really don't. It's very rare. You can tell when a student is really struggling and they come to see you regularly. You can tell the difference between when a child is trying to get out of something and when they're not. And no, it's usually a lot of the kids are struggling. And I think that now, like you said, it wasn't really like when we were growing up as known or as talked about, but the students are very open when they're struggling. They'll let us know, like, I'm having a really bad day, I'm really upset, or they'll even tell us if they're self-harming or having suicidal thoughts. So they're very open about it and they do want help. And I think because we're spreading this awareness, there's a lot of social workers in schools, not as many as we need, but there are social workers in some schools, that they are more open about it and open with their friends about it. And they
Mhm.
are more open to sharing their emotions. And you could definitely tell when a student's trying to get out of work, and it's very rare.
Mm, mhm. Um, so you talked about, the pandemic and coming back from the pandemic and seeing a lot of escalated cases. Do you think it was like, what would you say was like the main cause for coming back? And is this the stress, the change in the environment, or what was like the big trigger, something at home that just like maybe came forward to light being at home so much?
I don't know if I don't think for my school in particular, I know this was across the country, but I don't think we know the main causes. I think it's probably a lot of different things. Being out of school for basically 2 years, and some students
Mm-hmm.
that struggle with social anxiety really preferred online school. They preferred being virtual. So some of our
Mm-hmm.
students that have that intense social anxiety, they actually did better virtually. So I think it depends. But I think also with social media, I think a lot of the issues that were going on before school ended because of COVID, they carried through on social media, all these fights and all these posts and things like that. So I don't know what happened, but once we got back in the building, there were just fist fights every
Oh
single day. And I don't
my
know. I
gosh.
think a lot of drama and fighting was happening over social media, and then they were thrown back together. I'm not sure if that was the case, but I don't think anyone really knows. And, we just never know what children are going through at home, their relationships with their parents, how that looks. And nobody really knows except the people in that home. And I don't know if it's because that was a toxic or abusive situation, what have you, but they came back, very dysregulated.
Mm. So our audience is mostly parents and moms. And I'm just wondering, do you have any tips for them who, the moms who might have those like older children in middle school and high school that might be going through something and those kids are communicating to them, but maybe they don't really know what to say really, or how to move forward, or even the thought of therapy. Maybe they have a preconceived notion that therapy is bad, which I don't agree with. I think therapy is great,
Right.
but what would you say to those parents and those moms?
Right. Well, that brings up a good point because I think a lot of children and teens, they don't know exactly how to verbalize what they're going through sometimes, especially to their parents. They get nervous speaking to their parents. So I think a lot of children don't verbalize in a way and go to their parents and say, "Hey mom, I'm having a hard time at school. I'm I'm being bullied, or I'm having a lot of anxiety." And I think a lot of times children and teens, they do feel off, but they don't know exactly what is wrong. So I would say to more look for changes in their behavior, changes in their sleeping patterns, eating habits. Look for those changes and try to communicate with them. A lot of times, if you're a parent to a child or teen, they'll push you away a lot, especially the teenagers, they'll shut down. But look out for that and let them know that you have that open communication, that the door is open to talk with you, and that you are willing to provide support. You could ask them, do you want to talk to somebody? Do you want me to talk to the school counselor? Do you want me to talk to the school social worker? Do you want to go see somebody? We could go together. I could go in with you. Like, just give them a lot of different options. And if you don't know, reach out to the school, ask them your options, ask them for resources. A lot of schools will have a lot of resources to give you. If you're struggling, talk to their teachers. So I would say definitely, just because a child's not going to come to you most likely and verbalize that they need help or that something's wrong, look out for those signs, these different changes. Are they staying in their room? Are they up all night? Are they only on their phone? Were they really, really sweet and now they're in a bad mood all the time? Just look out for those changes in their behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Some parents would say those are like normal teenager behaviors.
Right, right. And that's what's hard because teenagers are known for being moody and, being attitudey and nasty and isolating themselves. And while that can be, because being a teenager is very hard, all the hormones and school and everything, it's a really hard time in life, right? But you know your child. If you feel like something's wrong, if you have that gut feeling, don't ignore it, don't push it away, even if it is typical normal teenage behavior. Teenagers are going through it, right? Like, they're having a hard time. So any teenager is probably going through something. So open that door for communication. Don't be scared to ask your child what's going on, what's wrong, and then try to build that relationship with them. Even though a lot of times your child is going to reject you, if you say, "Hey, let's watch a movie together, let's go out for ice cream, let's have dinner together," a lot of times your teen may reject that, but just let them know that that invitation is there and that door is open if they want it. Like, if your child is closing off the relationship, don't give up on them and don't agree to close that relationship, right? Like, keep putting in effort and keep trying. And I know that's exhausting and I know that's draining, but your child needs to know that you're there for them and that you're a support for them.
Yeah, that really is great advice. So I know that maybe, it's starting to get better like amongst the adults and the parents, that there's still that stigma with like mental health and therapy, but do kids have that same stigma, and do they feel some kind of way when they're like sharing with their friends that they're possibly going to therapy or need therapy, and how do you help them navigate that?
I don't think that the teens have nearly as much stigma as the adults do. The teens are very open and they're very open about going to therapy. A lot of our students go to therapy and they're open about it. I remember one day I said to a student, I went into his classroom to pick him up to bring him to his car because he had a therapy appointment. And I just said, like, you have your appointment today, right? And he said, it's not a doctor's appointment, it's a therapy appointment. And I said, no, I know. I just wanted to make sure, so they are very open about that they're seeing a therapist. And I think that's really great.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's great that there's more focus being put on this in light of all the things that are happening, that we do spend some time more and make sure the kids, in a good mental and emotional state. So, what would you say are your top 3 tips for parents with middle school, high school kids, and, figuring out how to get through, mental health and during this state and this age? What would you say are like your top 3 tips to help parents?
I would say definitely seek out support because being a parent to a teenager is very difficult. It's very draining and it could be very, very hard, right? So seek out support for yourself if you yourself need to see a therapist, um, or see friends, things like that. Or join, different groups, Facebook groups, whatever it is, virtual groups. I would say, seek out that support for yourself. I would say, again, leave that door open for communication and support for your child. Let them know that you're there for them. Let them know that you want to spend that time with them. Keep inviting them to do things together. Ask them about their interests and be open-minded about what they're interested in. And if they want to show you 100 TikToks in a row, watch those and, really be open to getting to know what they like to do. And I would say, definitely seek out resources, be in close contact with the school, with the teachers, with the social workers. And if you need help, ask for that help. And I think a lot of the issues lie in, a lot of people don't know what to do. They don't know where to turn, and you can turn to your school for those different resources.
Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of the moms and the parents who are listening will find some relief that, there are services that exist for kids who need more support, therapeutic support, and then parents can tap into that as well, so they don't feel alone. So the kid doesn't feel alone, and so the families and the parents don't feel alone too. So this has been great. So yeah, Desiree, where can our audience find you and connect with you?
Yeah, well, I'm on all social media platforms. I do have my own podcast, so the Wellness Project with Des. You will find me if you want to connect with me every day and you want mental health and wellness tips. I have a Facebook group, the Wellness Project with Des as well, and I'm in there every day, multiple times a day, and it's a really great community. So I love that, and I'm also on Instagram and TikTok mostly, so you can find me on there as well.
Awesome. So we'll get all those links from Desiree, and then we'll make sure we'll have them all in the show notes. But thank you so much for joining us on the Mamaverse podcast. This has been really informational, really educational. I think a lot of parents are going to find really great value from this to help them and their children navigate, the plight of being a young adult, a teenager, middle schooler time frame. But thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. So everybody who is listening in, make sure you go give Desiree a follow on social media and ask her your questions and see what kind of tips that, that might help you. And thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.